Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vassell, and this is
Hey, this is Jamie from the Secret Cabal.
yeah.
How's
If you
everybody
haven't,
doing?
it's Friday night, man. Friday night. Although, as I keep telling everybody, I am really confused as to when one day starts and another day begins. We've started doing things. I start doing things with my kids like on specific days. So now
Yeah.
we have Sundays. Ice cream toppings and all that stuff, and that's Sunday, right? So.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
the same way. My wife and I are just in the house at this point, and one day is the same as the next. It's Friday night. Usually Friday night would be different than it is any other night, but not anymore. It's the same night every night, but we're having fun.
I do like this. The Mr. E says, "So is this chat going to take 3 hours?"
It possibly could. We can talk a lot.
Yeah, I was listening to I don't know if it's your latest episode. I might be an episode or two behind where you were talking about people not talking at the end of games, and that kind of blew my
Right.
mind because we're always arguing for a long time after a game's over about what happened. Uh,
It Well, really, in the discussion that we had about it, it really is in the environment that you're in. Because when we have our Wednesday night game night, when it's just Steve and I and Chris and my close crew, yeah, we're talking, we're going crazy, we're arguing about what's going with the rules and your dumb strategy and this and that and back and forth. But sometimes when we go to our public game night, we go to a place called Beer Mongers and we play games there. And sometimes it just feels a little weird because you're not as comfortable with everybody there. And when you win, I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to brag about this. I'm going to let somebody else bring it up if I win, actually. But
yeah, I think what I do is
something
I just ask people what they think of the game because I'm going to probably end up reviewing it when I play with people I don't know. So I'm like, oh, so what y'all think? And get that reaction. I kind of feel them out. I don't win very often, so that part's not a problem. But I will say I pack a game up a little faster when I've won because you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Especially when you've crushed people. I
exactly. You feel a little embarrassed about it.
I gotta say I really hate when you play somebody and you're beating them and you can tell they're not doing it. So you're like, I'm gonna try some weird thing, okay? So it evens out, and then that weird thing just pays off in dividends,
Right. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you're really beating them, and you're like, oh man, how did this happen? It's
And that's
I don't
usually
know.
the games when you first start a game out for the first time. You've just learned it. And your that random strategy that you didn't think would be good, but it was that hidden one in there. That's we were talking about it the other day with Blood Rage. The first time we played Blood Rage, we all got together. Somebody taught the game. We were sitting in the hotel room at Gen Con playing Blood Rage, and I was like, I think I'm going to start collecting these Loki cards. And I just got them all and lost every battle and beat them by like 50 points. And they were all like pissed off at me and going wild. That was just, I had no idea. I just picked
Right.
Loki and started collecting him.
Well, today is a historic day in the board game community because the Kickstarter board game record has been beaten.
That's right.
Frosthaven almost made 13 million.
Oof.
It was like 12.9 or something.
So that's the fourth highest Kickstarter in history, right? No, it's the highest board game ever, but the
Right.
fourth highest ever because the cooler or the coolest cooler or something is higher than in some smartwatch that is gone at this point. But that's awesome that a board game is the fourth highest Kickstarter in history. I love that.
Especially during this time, right? It's a very intriguing thing. They certainly advertised it. I think
Yeah.
anywhere I went on the internet, it was like, "Hey, have you backed Frosthaven yet?" I'm like, "Yes, get out of
Mm-hmm.
my face." But congratulations to Isaac. And speaking of Kickstarter, Jamie is running one next week.
I am, and I'm planning on getting $14 million and being third place, which won't happen. But yeah, so we're running our Kickstarter starting next Wednesday, May 6th. It's our yearly fundraiser, same as the Dice Tower does, where we fund the year's worth of content for through our Kickstarter. And we have all kinds of rewards. You know, we had the Gloomhaven scenario, and we have a game bag this year, the Secret Cabal game bag, and all our normal stuff. But yeah, that's how we get our stuff made for the year with our Kickstarter.
And if you haven't listened to their podcast, it is very entertaining. I listen to it often. And now I may have missed it, but did Steve get my check?
Steve, well, if he got your check, he didn't say anything to me about it. As a matter of fact, he wouldn't say anything to me about it.
No, well, see, he was talking on one podcast about, he has this shtick about putting his quotes on Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. And he said something about nothing personal or something, said, Vasa, where's my check? So I sent him a check for 2 cents.
You did?
I did. I sent it to his email account at the Secret Cabal, so I don't know if he checks that very often.
He didn't tell me, but I'll have to get him to look that up.
All right.
That's great. Well, thank you, Tom, for giving us some podcast.
Hey, man. I don't want. I tell him I thought I gave him a fair value, what it was worth.
Yeah, right.
All right. All right, folks, you can ask questions here. We probably have some questions already. Let me slide down here. Yeah, we did do a top 10 yesterday because we announced the Dice Tower Award nominations. Let's see here. Tom, when I was growing up, my dad had my mother set up a daily schedule for dinner. Steak was always Sundays, and the schedule was set to be repetitive. I don't know if I'd like that all the time, though, right? Like
food on a schedule, yeah.
My wife's parents did that when I first met her, and her parents had spaghetti every Monday, and every Tuesday was and I was like, 7 meals? No! There's so much food out there.
Let me tell you, my parents, that was the way it is, and I think it's because my mom only knew 7 recipes. It was, so we had the same thing, and I remember very specifically one time a new recipe showed up. It was chicken that was cooked in Italian salad dressing. And I got all excited because it was this brand new thing that I never had before. And that's all it was. It was chicken breasts in Italian salad dressing, and that made me freak out.
The mystery says, is Isaac the only millionaire board game designer? No.
Alex Baccarino would be right. Alan Moon would be right.
Alan Moon, I know that because he's said it. Donald Baccarino, probably Klaus Teuber for Catan.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure.
And probably Klaus-Jürgen Raid, who did Carcassonne. Shavato must be with Codenames.
Codenames. Yeah. I always forget that he designed that. It's one of those games where you never think about the designer anymore because it's almost a staple.
Did he design Codenames? I always forget.
Or
CG did it. I can't remember if it's his game now.
Yeah, he designed that one. See, I told you. You always forget who designed that one because it's just a game now. Like,
Well, he's one of the more diverse gamers out there. But yeah, there's probably other ones that you don't know about that just happen to be. Of course, somebody could design a game and then invest the money too. But if you sell a lot of a game of mass market, I'm pretty sure the Trivia Pursuit guys were millionaires. And yes, a lot of design Codenames. Yeah, it's interesting, but it's not that many, right? And even though Gloomhaven, Frosthaven made 13 million, first of all, Kickstarter's like, hey, thanks for the 100,000.
Yeah, right.
They scamper off, having done almost nothing.
I'm laughing here because someone in the chat said that you're a millionaire because of Vicious Fishes.
I actually, the very last time he emailed me, he's like, I got a check for you. I was like, look, just keep it. It's kind of embarrassing to get a $2 check or something. Just, you could, I give you all my proceeds.
Well, think of it this way. There's still copies being sold here and there. I mean, it could be just dead completely, you know?
Sure, but I mean, most games die, so that wouldn't bother me much anyway. Yeah, I mean, even nothing personal. I didn't do the second edition, but the first edition was like 5,000 copies maybe, which is a lot, in a sense. But probably in the year 2020, none have sold, right? Mm-hmm. Probably none have sold.
Right, yeah.
I do see them show up on Geek List every once in a while. Like, I'm clearing out my game collection. I'm like, that's cool. So, alrighty, let's see here. And then someone says, how much more money will it make when the Pledge Manager opens? That's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Pledge managers are an important thing. Although Isaac did specifically say give the money now before the pledge manager because he wanted to break that record.
Yeah, right.
But pledge managers, they make a good deal more, maybe sometimes 20% more after the Kickstarter.
Yeah, I definitely, when we started implementing a pledge manager in our Kickstarter, it was a huge deal because the number that was the forward-facing number on Kickstarter went down quite a bit. But then we make all that back up in the pledge manager. So it's a very deceiving thing. And I do remember that Isaac was talking about a lot of people pledging at $1, particularly because of the situation we're in right now, right? Everybody's like, well, you know what? I'm going to wait and I'm going to pledge $1 and then I'm going to wait for the pledge manager. So I bet there's going to be a ton of people that are getting it through the pledge manager. I'm going to go to the Kickstarter here and look. Just curious how many $1 pledges there still are.
But you know,
there are 13,550 $1 pledges.
Really? Wow,
Yes.
That's amazing.
Wow. And you know that they're not doing it just for the updates, right?
That's a lot of $1.
I know.
So it is interesting to me, though, that pledge manager thing is really tricky, right? So, for example, with Kamon's running Ankh right now, a game that you and I are both excited about.
So you bought into the name pronounced that way?
I don't know how it's pronounced. They don't even know how to pronounce the name of their own company.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not going to. Anyway, so I backed the game, and then I saw that there's these optional add-ons. And I said, well, I don't have to decide now. I'll wait till the pledge manager. It already funded it. And I know it hits a gazillion stretch goals, but whatever. You know, it's going to hit them or not. So I'd rather wait till then because I have a little bit more clear head when it comes time to that pledge manager.
That is for sure. And that's what I backed the Marvel United. And I was like, I know there's going to be 10,000 billion Marvel characters, chibis, that I'm going to want to have sitting all over my basement. And probably 10 years from now, I'm going to think about painting them. I want them all. And they had, what was it, like 6 different expansions with the characters I wanted, of course. Yeah, well,
that's one where the stretch goals
went away, and I still pledged for them all anyway.
But that was one where the stretch goals were different, like with these other games. So when they do Ankh and they say, "Oh, there's this we're adding these new units," I go, "Oh, that's cool." But with the Marvel one, I was like, when are they coming out with this character?
Yeah.
Are the X-Men going to show up? I kept asking that every day.
That was the one campaign that I was invested in, because you just mentioned Ankh. I backed Ankh as well. I have not looked at the page since I backed it. I backed it in like the first hour. And then I haven't looked at the page since. So I don't even know. You just say like, oh, they have these new units. I don't know. I haven't looked at it yet. But when that Marvel United was up, it was a daily thing. Every now and then I would look back and see, ooh, what's the next character? And I was like, oh, they didn't make it yet. Next day I would come in and it would pop up and you'd be like, ooh, finally Nebula's there, So it was like a daily thing for me and that's just because I love Marvel. So I wanted to see what the characters
because you knew what the stretch goals were. That's interesting. And when they come out with the inevitable part 2, where they'll have the X-Men and that, oh my word.
Fantastic Four and all of them. Yep, for sure.
Alrighty. Kabuki Kid says, what's the highest level, Jamie, that you ever got a D&D character to?
That's a great question. It definitely isn't 20. Everybody talks about the 20th level, the big level. I've never gotten one to 20 because we always quit early. I would have to say that it was probably around 15 or 16, probably. That would be the highest I ever went. And, we always talk about on our role-playing show, we like to switch campaigns a lot, almost more frequently than keep that long campaign going on for years. When I was a kid, we would play a campaign for a really, really long time, like 2 years, 3 years sometimes. And we'd switch characters a lot. Someone would die and we'd start a new character and whatnot. But now it's, we'll go 6 months and we'll be playing a D&D campaign. And we're like, you know what? Kind of feel like playing Star Trek now. So we just switched to Star Trek Adventures and kind of feel like playing Shadowrun for a little bit. So we kind of bounce probably twice a year to a new game. So we don't get high level. And much to the chagrin of some of the people at the table, we really tried with D&D this time. We got up to 14th level before we switched to Star Trek, and we all vowed we're going to go back and make sure that we get higher. We'll see if that actually happens.
Are you feeling pretty powerful at level 14?
Yeah, I mean, I'm running the game, and I have a character in the game that's sort of an NPC and kind of just hangs around. So I'm not actually playing at this high level, but I definitely know that the players are powerful because as the GM, I have a difficult time balancing for them because they have such a wide array of powers with the cleric and the rangers going wild, or the rogues going wild, and the wizards got spells all over the place. Yes, there is. You do feel powerful. But the GM has to counterbalance that by putting in things that are challenging for them. So that kind of equals out in a sense then.
All right, Corlu says, have either of you played using a 0 player count? Like, so you've been eaten, which is, I think, the only one actually out there.
Yeah, 0 player count. You're going to
have basically, 0 player count is you just let the computer play itself. So the AI, you just had the AI play against the AI.
Like Sim Earth. You could turn on Sim Earth back in the day, and you could let it play, and you'd come back the next day, and the game was over. Because the Earth evolved.
I think I did that with Civ. I think there was a way I was able to make the civilizations fight each other. And it was kind of fascinating to see that happen. Yeah, but for a board game, that's put in there just as a marketing ploy. Who cares?
Yeah, right. I've never seen that, nor ever tried to do that. I've played both sides before. That's me playing myself. I do that all the time, actually, now.
Oh, here's a good one. Michael says, Tom, can you describe the infamous event from Origins that happened from your perspective? I remember this. Because you...
Yeah.
Well, why don't we... So people don't actually know about it, because I don't talk necessarily about it in my podcast. So why don't you explain it from your end first, and then I'll tell people what I saw.
Okay. So we were at Origins, and at every convention, the Secret Cabal does their Secret Cabal meetup. And this was way early on when we had a very small number of people at our meetups. It was probably like 30, 40 people at this one. So this was, I don't know, it was like 6 years ago or something.
Right.
And we make pint glasses. Here's one of our whiskey glasses that we made, but we make pint glasses and we would sell them to our listeners. And we brought a couple of them to our meetup at the Big Bar on 2 at the convention center at Origins. And we just brought the pint glasses because, hey, somebody might want one, so we'll just, they'll give us $15. We'll hand it off to them. Well, unfortunately, we had two friends there, our good buddy, Dr. James, and another listener. We let them sell them for us, and they were selling them hand over fist, like holding them up, 2 fists, and like, get your pints here, get your pints. People were giving money, and I was like, wow. Well, John Ward he runs Origins. He worked for Gambling.
He ran. He no longer does it now.
He's not there anymore. And he comes out of an elevator, turns the corner, and sees this going on, and his face just went red. I've never seen anybody look so angry in their life because, and his reasoning was that, he sells space in the Big Bar on 2 around Geek Chic game tables, used to have a room back there and some other things. And so he sells this space for vendors to do things, right? And I was just kind of like, our group was just kind of commandeering this area to do this. Well, he starts going wild, and he takes away the badges from some of our listeners. He tries to take our badges away. He is mad. Now, the problem with this whole situation is we're at a bar, so I had a lot of drinks that night because listeners were like handing me a beer. I had 2 of them in my hands at all times at that moment. So I wasn't in the best state of mind. And he's yelling in my face about this, and Bonacor comes breaking in because Bonacor knows John, and we go off to the side and we start talking it out. Eventually, Bonacor cools him down. And the reason that you're being asked about this, Tom, is you come into the Big Bar on 2, and I'm trying to explain what happened to you. And from my perspective, you didn't understand a word I was saying because you just stopped me and you said, Jamie, can you take me to Chris, please? And I was like, sure.
Well, I remember this because earlier that night I had seen Jamie, and he said, we'll talk tomorrow. And then the next day he said, I never said that. But he definitely did. So I was coming up and someone said, oh, there's something going down. And John Ward texted me or called me. It was one of the two. I can't remember. And said, hey, some of your guys are causing a problem. And I was like, so my guys? What guys? They're all here with me. But he was part of the Dice Tower Network, right?
Yeah, right.
So I ran up there. I'm all panicked. And yes, Jamie couldn't explain it. So then I asked Chris, and Chris couldn't explain it really well either. And then Bonniger showed up in full Godfather mode. And he was kind of just like, he's like, I got it all covered. Don't worry about it. We'll talk about it tomorrow. We'll let things calm down. It was bad for a while, but it's good now. I was like, all right. I'll worry about it tomorrow.
He was in his element, trying to take care of business and being the mediator between all the different people. He felt like powerful in that moment. He was powerful in that moment. He was helping us out quite a bit, and I loved it.
Well, yeah, there was a few things. So, John was someone who was. It was very easy to poke him and kind of get him explode. I've done it myself on occasions, and so from what I understood, one of the guys, he said, "You can't do this." They said, "You can't stop us," not realizing he was the head of Gamma. They just thought he was some random guy. He was not some random guy. He's the president. So when you tell him he can't do something, he was just like, "Really?" And that's when he took the badges. Fortunately, they got him back.
See, I didn't know even that part. So one of the guys was probably a little not speaking for us. Let's put it that way.
Well, sure, but you know how that works. Sometimes at cons, a volunteer will come up to you and they have this level of authority that's here, and you're like, "Who are you?"
Right.
Except this wasn't some volunteer, but you don't know that. So,
well, the good thing about that whole situation is that because that happened, we became friends with John Ward at that point.
Yes.
And John Ward actually started helping us with things. He said, like, listen, come to me. We'll talk. We'll figure out a good place for you to have this meetup because it's obviously getting too big for the Big Bar on 2. We'll look for venues all around the area and help you out. And they hooked us up with a place. And we have a very good rapport with Origins now because of that bad situation that happened. So, yeah. And it's a good story to tell.
He would blow up, but if you stuck to your guns, he always kind of like appreciated that. If you said, "This is what's going on," and talked to him directly, because the same thing happened with us, because I had said how awful the Origins Awards were really publicly, and I got a phone call from the guy, and I was like, I'm not here. But then they asked me to help out with the Origins Awards.
We've said many times in the past that the Origins Awards were really bad, and I can't lie, this year's are a little weird too.
Oh my!
I looked at that list and I'm like, what is this list?
We were saying that one of the best things about Origins getting moved was at least they wouldn't have to do that award ceremony. So, all righty, let's see here. Kabuki Kids dislikes chibis. I didn't like chibis at the beginning, but they're growing on me.
See, that's a funny thing you say that because that's exactly with me too. I would have said years ago, I hate those chibis. They're so dumb. Just give me the real characters. Now I look at them. I think it was Arcadia Quest that got me okay with them, even though they're kind of, I guess they're chibi. I don't know what chibi really is, what the definition is, but I love that game. And I think I got okay with them. And then I look at these Marvel United chibis and I'm like, they're kind of cute and they'd be fun to paint. So I'm okay with them now.
Jamie, have you ever thought about doing a live video podcast with the Secret Cabal guys? Like recording it, the video live too. It does show a little bit behind the curtain because the editing goes away.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. I like the editing portion of it. I like it. I think the show will come out much better that way. Secondly, the room that we record in is not attractive in any stretch of the imagination. So there's no real good way to set up a camera in there and make it look good. I guess it would just be a candid thing. I mean, it's possible to do that kind of thing. Maybe I'll just set up a camera and point it at us and let us go. But then also you wouldn't get Tony on the other side. You wouldn't get Brian on the other side.
Well, no, you could do what everyone else is doing now, the multiple webcams.
Right, yeah. And right now we're all recording remote because of the social distancing thing. So, and this past episode was the first time that we just recorded. We didn't release it yet. That we just actually used video during our podcast. We used Discord for recording our podcast. We had all of our screens up there. We had everybody, including Rodney. Rodney joins us for the next episode coming up, and he was in there as well. So I could record that actually, and maybe edit that somehow. Of course, that would take me hours to edit that too.
Editing's fast. That's what Roy tells me. No, I'm kidding, Roy. Right? Don't kill me. All right. Jeremy says, I know you both love what you do. However, what is something you miss about being a hobbyist before content creation? There's a couple things. I think I miss going to a convention and not caring what I did. Because I could
about that quite often, Tom, actually, when we're at conventions.
Yeah.
I feel that way. And here's the thing with that, and actually this is what was part of my answers. I strive to not have my life change into something that it wasn't before. Sure. When we started the podcast, and even to today, I try really hard to make the convention trips not as much business. Now, granted, I have to go talk to some publishers. I have to do this. I have to do that. We do our meetups. We do all this different stuff. But for the most part, when we go to an Origins or a Gen Con, I'm trying to be a con goer, because usually when I come back to the podcast, it's the stories about what we did that make the good content, not me going to some, some publisher is going to show me like 5 games that they're coming out with. That doesn't mean anything to me. I see those games on BGG a month ago, and now you're showing them to me in person, or I have them in my hands because I got them anyway. That none of that really does anything for me. I want to create a bunch of weird stuff that happens and then go back to the podcast and spin the yarns of the fun things that happen. And I try to do that with most of my gaming life, right? We sit down and we play games. And actually, that's one of the reasons we added Don to our podcast. Not just because we love Don and he's our good friend and he's great on the show, but because that adds another person who's playing a lot of games so that we have more content. So that lightens the burden for the rest of us to not have to play games for the show. We can play games because we want to play games, which ultimately makes the show better because we're talking about games we like as opposed to the games we have to play. So we try really hard not to make that affect our gaming lives.
I have thought about the number one thing, though, I think, that I'd miss is a sense of wonder and discovery. Because we keep up with the news all the time. You guys have the news. Tony gives you all the news. We follow Kickstarters. You got to stay on, what's board. So when I go to a convention, it happens occasionally where I'll walk up and go, "What is this?" But most of the time I'm like, "Oh yeah, there's that game I heard about. There's that thing," and it's not a surprise. I remember the first time I went to Origins, it just blew my mind, and that's gone. I mean, I don't hate it, but I miss that a little.
Tom, that is such a great thing you just said, because I feel the same exact way. And recently, it was not that recently, it was probably a year and a half ago or something, I discovered a game that I never heard of before. I got a text message from a friend who said, "Hey, do you know any board games about the space race?" And I was like, there are a couple. Let me do a quick search. And I looked and I was like, blah, 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 blah. And then I came across this one called Leaving Earth. And it was actually pretty highly rated on Board Game Geek. Like, it's in the top 200 or something, I think. And I was like, what is this game? I've never seen it before. And I started looking into it. And I had that, it washed over me like back in like 2005 when I didn't know anything about board games. And I just found this great game that I'm excited for. And I was researching it. Like, there were barely any videos about it. I was Googling and I found the publisher and I ordered it and I got it in the mail, and it's a made to order board game. Like, they make it in their little print shop, put it in like almost like a shoebox and send it to you. But it's still really beautiful cards and artwork and stuff. But that gave me that feeling of discovery again that I hadn't had for years. And it's very, very rare when I get that. Because like you said, we're always looking at BGG. We're always seeing what's on the hotness. We're always looking at what's coming out real soon. And we're always getting emails, like press release emails of, 6 months from now, we're bringing out this game. So I know about it ahead of time.
It's actually a little disappointing for me because I'll see some cool news and I'll be like, "Hey guys, did you see this?" Like, "Yeah, we did." "Oh, okay."
Yeah, right.
I can't get anyone excited about anything because the news is so on the tip everywhere.
Right.
That you're like, "Did you know there's this new game out?" Yeah, we do. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, alrighty, fine.
Welcome to yesterday, Jamie.
Yeah. All right, Jamie, do you have a bar samurai sword display in the background?
A bar samurai sword? Well, there is a bar back there, in a sense. There's a whole bunch of bottles of liquor back there. There's no sword back there, though. There are swords over there on that side of the room. That's Reaper from Overwatch. And then just a bunch of D&D books and Godzilla fighting Mechagodzilla and my gnome Spock back there. That's about it. Oh, and the dog's playing poker.
Yeah, I'm still confused about the dogs playing poker because I always thought it was like one famous painting, and now there's so many of them. I don't know which one's like the OG.
I have no idea either. I just happened to be at a store and I was like, you know what? That's great for a game room. So I just bought it and hung it up there.
It's funny. I when I'm looking for something to add to my game room, I always tell my wife I'll know it when I see it. I'm way pickier with that sort of thing than I am with a game. I'll see a game. I should try that out. Something I'll be like, I'll sit there and I'll think a long time. Do I need this particular statue?
Mm-hmm.
So
it gets very, when you start putting together like a game room with knickknacks and things, it gets to a point where you have all the shelf space is full of stuff. You're like, do I jam more in or do I shift in and out? At this point, I have all the shelf space with something on it. But every now and then something new comes in. As a matter of fact, because I wanted to do the live stream tonight, I went over and borrowed this USB adapter from Chris. He left it out on his front porch. Well, in the little bag, he had some Funko Pops inside that he gave me. So a Black Cauldron Funko Pop, the Horn King.
Oh, that's cool.
The gelatinous cube, the D&D gelatinous cube.
That's the one I want.
So cool looking. And I'm like, these are the greatest ever. I have to figure out what I'm going to move to put these on the shelf now.
Wait, do you have the gelatinous cube right there?
It's upstairs. I can go run and get it. If you want to question.
That was like a special one to get at a con, wasn't it? That one was harder to get, I thought.
I don't know. So I'm not a Funko Pop guy. I'm not a collector generally. Chris is. He's got hundreds of them in his house. And he buys for his friends things that he knows they would specifically like. And these were two, because Black Cauldron's my favorite Disney movie. And but they didn't have a Gurgi, which really upset me. He's like, I look for Gurgi. They don't make Gurgi, but they make the Horn King, which is the coolest villain. But then the gelatinous cube. So I don't know if they were hard to get or not.
I'm always amazed when someone says there's a new Funko Pop coming out because I feel like they've done everything.
Yeah, right.
So I got a few. I just get the ones I'll go look at them at the store. Barnes and Nobles would always have them, for like half price in that section. But there's so few I want. I have Kool-Aid Man. I wanted him, and I Mr. Rogers, and
I got the Kool-Aid Man for the Funko Verse game.
Oh,
I had to go to Target and buy that.
That was so exciting when I heard about that. That's something you wouldn't expect. I really like that those guys are doing stuff like that. How do you guys define dudes on a map game? I had a debate on Facebook whether Rurik Dawn of Kiev was or not.
That's an interesting argument, actually. There are dudes on that map, but it ain't no, Cry Havoc or Lords of Hellas or
I don't know.
Risk,
That's like a hybrid
it's more of like
game,
a
I think.
worker placement game, right? But the dudes are on the map to sort of be the area influence. Would you call El Grande a dudes on a map game?
No.
Then
there's got to be.
Rurik wouldn't be, right?
To me, dudes on a map has to include combat. There's a little bit of combat in Rurik, but it's not. It's basically just.
Yeah, you take the action that you're going to kill somebody.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, right? I like Rurik. It's a fun game, but I don't know. To me, it's if you have armies and you're fighting someone else with armies. Pretty much. That's it. It's just. It's also one of those, with these kind of games, I know it when I see it. And also, if we're arguing over whether Rurik is or not, that's the kind of argument that about 2 minutes in, I'm already bored of that argument. You can win. It is. Or it isn't, whichever one you want.
This is what makes... It's funny because this is what a podcast is all about. Arguing about things that normally you get bored about, but we're going to go on for 15 minutes to 20 minutes to an hour about this one thing.
Yeah, that's true. And that's different. Yep. But like in real life, and especially if somebody gets really into something, I'm like, okay, your point's valid. You win.
You win.
I guess. I don't care that much about that particular thing. Although I'm sure that I've been there before because I'm pretty sure people have said that to me. All right, Tom. And then when that happens, I'm like, I'm making too big of a deal about something.
Right, yeah. That was me back in the day when we would talk about comic books, we would talk about movies, particularly movies. Because when I was in my early 20s, movies were the thing, man. I had this board game collection behind me, this would have been VHS tapes back here in my early 20s. And man, if we were sitting at a diner and we started talking about movies, I had an opinion about everything. And I've gotten sort of away from, at least I have an opinion about everything on a podcast because that's what you do. But I've sort of lightened up a little bit over the years. That's what 20-something men have those problems. Their hobby, and they know it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a very opinionated person is someone who's interesting to listen to, but they're not always easy to be friends with.
Right.
Like, I love listening to opinionated people, but when I get around one, I find that I'm starting to get worked up sometimes. You're like, oh, well, you're wrong.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on your demeanor, right? If they come off as they're having a fun conversation and giving their opinions about it, or if you're the kind of guy who's like, well, there's no point in having a remake of Dawn of the Dead because the original was the best Dawn of the Dead, or the best zombie movie ever made, and you're crazy if you think. And I'm like, but the second one's good too. I have 2 cool movies now.
All right, outside of Board Game Geek, what are some good ways to get the newest gaming news? I believe it's Tony Topper, right?
Oh, well, I have to be Tony. Well, he gets it wrong sometimes, but hopefully he's not watching. Well, he doesn't read the articles. We read the articles. Oh, my goodness. The best way to get gaming news. Well, I'll tell you how Tony actually does it. He follows ICV2, which is my favorite news website for sort of insider board game and miniatures games and any kind of game news. It also has geek culture and stuff, too. That's a fantastic website.
I like to just
Tony
do a counterpoint that I
subscribe.
really, really dislike ICV2.
Really? You do? Why?
Well,
Why? I'm curious.
Because I think they have some good news, but it's very rarely well researched. It's usually just a headline, and I got to go find the actual news article. It's also very biased. When Origins and Gamma had their big brouhaha a year or so ago, it certainly took sides. It sometimes it prints, in my opinion, inflammatory news. And, you know, almost like a hee, this company's going out of business, and I don't know. I'd rather...
Interesting. Well, I don't usually see it that way, but I could see you feeling that way. I like it. But what Tony does is he subscribes to newsletters for all the different publishers.
Right.
And then he just gets an email every time that something happens. Now, that's going to jam up your inbox like crazy, but that's how he does it.
Some of them announce the same thing 30 times. So be warned on that. They'll be like, hey, guess what? This game has a new picture in the back of the box. I'm like, okay, that's not news. That's a good way. It's getting better. I used to feel like most board game companies went out of their way to not tell you what was going on. But nowadays, there's so many board game companies that they're shouting they have to get the news out there. So Board Game Geek is a good place. Obviously, I think Dice Tower News has news. Tony, every week I listen to Secret Ball. He manages to pull something out I didn't know about. So,
really? Well,
yeah,
I'm sure he'd be happy to hear that.
I usually am like, yeah, I knew that. Yeah, I knew that. But then there's something.
It's funny you say that about how companies used to like try to, keep things secret. There's another story I have about, I don't know I think it was Gen Con or Origins, probably Origins actually. We went to a yellow press event where it was just press, and Richard Garfield was there, and they were going to announce something about King of Tokyo. But if you went into this press event, you weren't allowed to announce or take pictures or talk about what you saw in there. And when we got in there, of course, it was funny because Bonacore dropped a tray of glasses on the floor and smashed them, and that was a big fun story. But when we were there, Richard Garfield was there, and the announcement was they had a Halloween expansion coming for King of Tokyo, and we all looked at each other and we were like, is this really what they're trying to keep under wraps? So Tony had his camera down by his side, and he kept taking pictures of the banner, and he was pretending to like be staring at Richard Garfield. He was just taking a bunch of pictures. He thought he was being all sly because he used to work for a newspaper in our hometown. When he was back in Pennsylvania, he worked for the York Daily Record. And so he will always get so very angry about board game publishers saying, for press release, embargoed until X date. And Tony says, what are you talking about? A press release means you're releasing it to the press. You don't embargo that information. You put it out when you press release. So Tony used to get very upset about that. But now it seems to be kind of like going away. People don't worry about those hiding the announcements anymore.
Yeah, I don't get it. Actually, I laughed at Yellow about that one in particular. I said, you invited all the press up. You told them about this new expansion and new stuff, and then you told them not to tell anybody. Right. So what was the point of that press conference then? Was it so later on when you do make the announcement, we're like, hey, guess what, guys? We knew about it a month early, but we didn't tell you.
Well, we went because there were free drinks. They had an open bar that night. And that's why Bonnecourt dropped the tray of glasses.
I think they stopped doing that a couple of years ago. They definitely didn't do it last year. But they got to the point where I started sending somebody else because they were like, we're going to do a bunch of big announcements, and then they usually weren't. So,
yeah, right.
The only company that was able to pull that off, lots of companies tried to copy Fantasy Flight with their mega announcement, the in-flight report, but no other company has that kind of sway. Right. Maybe Kaman could do something along that line.
Yeah. But again, most people know what's coming, Like, when did they announce Ankh? I mean, it was... That could have been something, I guess, but...
It was at our live show at Gen Con last year.
Oh, is that right?
But yeah. I mean, even then, it's kind of like they announce it on our live show, and then 3 seconds later, all over Twitter, everywhere. You know what I mean? It's right, yeah. News doesn't stay hidden for very long anymore.
Well, that's what I always say with the in-flight report for Fantasy Flight at Gen Con. Everybody's like, are you going to the in-flight report? And I'm like, I don't know, I'll just look at Twitter.
Right.
I don't really need to.
Because you'll see it, at each announcement, there's like 30 guys sitting there tweeting it out.
And although I did have a really good time at that one year, the year they announced Keyforge. And
that was a great time.
You and me and Rodney and I think Marty and some other people were all sitting in a row, and we were just kind of picking on everything that was going on and like goofing on things. That was fun.
That was a really fun time because they were announcing a bunch of stuff and we didn't care about any of it. Then they announced Keyforge and everyone was like, what is this? And they didn't explain it very much. And then they allowed questions. And people were getting up and asking the most inane questions. We're like, ask about... Rodney was shouting, we don't want to hear this. Ask about Keyforge.
Yeah, right. And that's one of the good reasons. Because, anybody who went to the in-flight report, which is, it's not just a press thing. You can actually get a ticket and go. Anybody can do it. And at the end, they gave everybody 2 Keyforge packs. And this was, 3 months before they were bringing them out?
Yeah, that was really awesome. So the rest of the weekend,
we were all playing Keyforge.
I really liked Fantasy Flight would do that. Like every 2 or 3 years they give something free. Then the next year everybody showed up and there was nothing. Because they gave out that Star Wars RPG the one year. I don't know. I always like going to it. Just it's a fun time. But they're the only company who's been able to pull off announcing a whole pile of stuff at one event.
Right. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many publishers come to me and go, oh, you're going to love what I'm going to tell you. And I'm like, all right, well, tell me when you get it. And about 5 minutes in, they're like, okay, this is what it is. Or something to that effect. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool, but it's not earth-shattering.
Right, yeah.
All right, let's get to some more questions. Jamie, I remember you saying Tom complaining that the founders like too many games. I didn't say that particularly. I said they were too like-minded. But they've definitely diverged as the years have gone by. Mm-hmm. But how do you keep from becoming too jaded about games?
Well, see, I have to say that the original question is that I like too many games. I don't actually just say that that's wrong because I do like a lot of games. It is very rare for me to dislike a game that I play. And one of the reasons that is because I don't have as much game time as Tom does. Obviously, Tom plays like almost every game.
Well, yeah, you don't play all the obviously crappy games that come
right, exactly. So I pick and choose what games I'm going to play, and I've gotten good at picking games I know I'm going to like. I'm pretty sure I'm going to like that game. Let's play it. So like that's why I like most of the games that I play because I'm going to like them. But as far as getting jaded, I really don't know. I don't buy a lot of new games constantly. I've been a lot lately. I've been going back to older games or trying to play some of the games that I bought and have not played yet. So I try to just mix it up quite a bit, you know. And I'm sort of an omni gamer too, so I like a heavy, crunchy Euro, and I also like crazy stuff like Fortune and Glory that's half broken, but it's still a really good time. So when I get bored of this side, I go to that side and I just have fun.
No, and I think it's better. There's no way you can't get a little bit jaded just because you'll play a game and you'll say, well, I obviously know when it's better than this. That's going to happen. Yeah. The more games you play, but you can still go into games hoping and expecting they're good. And even I do that. Usually there are some games that I'm like, well, okay, I'll play this because I have to. But, I got a pile of games sitting here. I got a game here that I'm excited to play because of Jamie, the Flotilla. I haven't played that one yet, but you said it was good. I just haven't played it because that rule book.
It's so complicated, but boy, is it cool when you get down to business.
I don't have anyone here to play it with right now. That's why
I know.
I got a bunch of fairly complex games. I've been able to knock out the easier ones right now, but nah. All right. Well, Kabuki says, "What are quick top 5 favorite comic books of all time?"
Ooh,
or just a few of your favorite comics
of all time? Wow, that's really difficult. Well, I love Hellboy. I've collected quite a few Hellboys. I still haven't gotten all of them because I kind of jump around to different comics. Love Hellboy. I love Conan. I collected all of the Conan comics.
Really?
Conan the Barbarian. Love them. They're fantastic. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I love that comic.
I've never read that one.
Fantastic one. The first one is the sequels to it. I didn't like nearly as much, but I loved that one. Also From Hell, which was also by Alan Moore. Watchmen, of course. Watchmen is one of the best ever. I'm just rattling off all the most famous comic books, but I guess I'm a mainstream comic book liker. But Watchmen is one of the best of all time, and I reread that one probably 10 times. Beautiful comic.
Yeah, I'm mostly Marvel. Outside Marvel, I like a weird comic called Bone from Jeff Smith.
Oh yeah, Bone. I know Bone.
That's it looks like a little kid comic when you first see it, Mickey Mouse style, but it's way deeper than that. It has a really strong fantasy element in it. It's then Marvel. I don't know. I jump around. I like events. I like the Civil War from Marvel. Still one of my favorite comics events ever.
Me too. I read through that. All of that one as well, and that was great. I just recently got Lock and Key. Chris, that's one of his favorite comics of all time. It's also one of Rodney's favorite comics. It was coming on to Netflix, and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to read this. And I was like, And all of a sudden, it showed up at my door. Rodney had bought it for me and sent it to me because he says, you got to read this. And I read it. I loved it. And then I watched the TV show, and I loved it as well, even though it wasn't the same. It was a different thing, but I still loved it. So Lock and Key is a great one, too. That Joe Hill and Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore are I'm going to, instead of giving you comics, those are the 3 comic writers that I love. They do great stuff.
Yeah, actually, I did what, you mentioned you went to Chris's house to do a switch off, and I did the same thing with Z. So I went and dropped the game off at his house, and he was leaving me, and actually he wasn't supposed to leave me anything. I was just dropping a game off. So I left it outside his house, and there was a bag that said Tom. I opened it up, and it was Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere, the graphic novel. Which I was like, I had read the novel. I didn't even know there was a graphic novel. So that was really cool. I really like that. That's like the new thing now, right? I texted him. I said the drug deal has been done, but this whole I don't see people, but occasionally I'll drop something off at their house, and like we just did an exchange of games because I'm going to be playing some solo games, and Z was the person to get them from.
I felt so weird too because I picked up the bag from Chris's front porch, and I looked inside. It was all the Funko Pops are in there. That's so nice. So I started like peering through his windows, like a weird creeper, and I was trying to find him to like wave and say thank you, but he wasn't anywhere in there. But I felt like a weirdo.
The neighbors across the street like, what's going on over there? So, alrighty, let's see. There's a lot of discussion going on here today. Yes, I got the Infinity Gauntlet love letter, and my review of that will go up soon. It's actually quite good. What game did you give a harsh review that upon giving a second chance you went, wow, this is actually a good game?
It's got to be one. Well, it's
rare that I give a harsh review and say it's good. There are games that I've warmed on.
I think that's the right way to put it. I think I've warmed on Dead of Winter because we didn't like that one when we originally played it. And then I warmed up to it over time. I still don't own it. But we got a lot of crap for not liking that game. Did it poorly. But I have warmed up to it over time. I know a perfect one. And this wouldn't necessarily be a review, but Dark Domains was a game I backed on Kickstarter, and it was in 2019 was when it came from Kickstarter. We played it once, and I was like, this game is crap. I don't understand anything in this game. Like, I don't understand the strategies. It was just bad. And we talked about it after the game a little bit, and I was like, you know what? Maybe we didn't play it right. So, the next week when we got back together, we played it again, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it, because I thought about it between gameplays. So I hated the game, thought about it, decided to approach it with a different mindset, and then loved it. So I don't know if that exactly answers the question, but it was certainly one that was a complete 180 flip from my play to the next play.
It is funny that I think we're kind of crossing with Dead of Winter because I loved it, and I still like it, but it's fallen for me some.
Mm-hmm. Have you played the one that's like the community versus community expansion?
No. As soon as I read that, I was like, who's going to do that? I have enough trouble getting enough people together to play the game.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to have enough people to get together to play one game, have another group playing their game, and somehow we're going back and forth. It just sounds like a slog. That sounded like too much work.
It was an interesting idea, but I didn't give it much thought to playing it.
Let's see here. What were some of your heroes growing up, and how does it feel now knowing a lot of people look up to you guys?
I don't know if anybody looks up to me. They like they like the show, but there's not much to look up to.
Heroes? I don't know. For me, a hero was kind of a weird thing because I didn't think of the word hero much. I knew there were people I looked up to. I looked up to my dad. I looked up to, even if I would never have said that.
Mm-hmm.
There were friends of my dad that I looked up to, and a few teachers. Teachers, the big one, I think. And that even went all up into college. There were a few teachers, and I just really looked up to those. It's weird now for me when people do that. Just recently on the cruise, a young lady played a game with me and said, just so you know, 10 years ago you taught me in Korea, and she thanked me for all that, and it really threw me off because I'm sitting there trying to think, was I a jerk in that class? Like, because teachers are there, but kids can see what you're worse too. So I don't know. It's a weird thing, but I don't think too much about it.
It is an interesting question, and I will say that, of course, my dad is my hero, and my dad is still my hero today. I'm exactly like my dad. Everything I do is like my dad. His love of my love of hobby, Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, all this kind of stuff, modeling and that kind of stuff, all came from him because he was into that kind of thing too. His was model trains. So it's really the same hobby, only I get to play with the game with mine. So it's like I got all of everything I am from him, my personalities from him as well, and just the way he approached life, and even now, later in life, how he approaches life. I just admire the heck out of him, and he's my hero. But I never thought about that when I was a kid. Like, you never think about that when you're a kid. He's your dad, right? It's just he's an influence on you. My heroes, or at least the people that I admire, were all movie characters, really, when I was a kid. And it was Mr. Miyagi. That guy, I'm not kidding. Like, I wanted to be friends with Mr. Miyagi my whole life. And to this day, I wish he lived next door. And I could go over there and hang out with him and, like, have him give me advice. that's the kind of person that I always looked up to in was movie characters. A lot of times I grew up with these characters, and they sort of shaped how I think in today's life. And everybody was talking about 80s movies earlier. I think the 80s were the best period of movies, and they made some of the best characters in history, and characters
I think that's just because that's when you and I grew up.
Well, that's true. That is true. But I still love my dad. Again, he brought me up in the 80s watching 1950s movies. All of my favorite movies and all of his favorite movies are the same from the 1950s. You know, The Thing from Another World, you know, The Day the Earth Stood Still, The Terror from Beyond Space. These are some of my favorite movies today, and they all came from him. Creature from the Black Lagoon is my absolute favorite movie.
That's right. Oh, I don't have it here. It's at work. I got a mask from the company that makes those for Universal.
Oh yeah,
it's a really good Creature from the Black Lagoon mask.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right, I'll have to pass it off to you at some point, but it's quite a big mask.
You get one of those foam heads, and you put the mask over it, and you just set that on the shelf, and there you got a gigantic knickknack.
That's true. Or we just stick it on our mannequin and scare people. Did Ronnie tell you we got him when he came to our house?
Oh, no, he didn't tell me.
Yeah, we stuck the mannequin with a clown wig on it and everything, put it in the bathroom, so when he opened the door, it was sitting there in the toilet looking at him.
That's funny.
We've done that to pretty much everybody, and I keep and people even know that it might happen, and they forget. We forget. Because I bought the mannequin because I thought it'd be a funny prop for the background. And then I stuck it in the house to scare the guys when they came in. And they were scared because, you know, it's a person standing there. And then they stuck it in my room and I was scared. And then I stuck it somewhere else. And it keeps happening. Mm-hmm. It's actually in a back closet right now. And every time I go in that closet, I'm like, oh, that's right. There's a guy in here. So I actually turned the mannequin's face to the wall because it's less creepy that way. So, all righty. Well, before we finish this up today, we want to mention once again your Kickstarter and your podcast, and people can find us. What's the website?
It is www.thesecretcabal.com. You can find our podcasts there. You can find the role-playing podcast there. Of course, we're on iTunes and Spotify, and what's the other one?
Sure, but you want people to go to the website because that's where they'll have a link to the Kickstarter also.
Absolutely right. Yep, and our Kickstarter is launching next Wednesday, May 6th. Check it out. We got a bunch of promos from all sorts of different great publishers and rewards and all kinds of crap that'll help us do what we do for another year.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can listen to the show. It's a group of guys all talking back and forth, and they have extremely... Someone just asked you...
lick your elbow. And I was trying.
I thought you were like licking the microphone there. I was like,
I can't lick my elbow.
That is... Who cares? Oh, actually, I was playing some facial game, and you had to make this face. It was like with a kid game, and you had to make a face, and then the kids had to guess which face you're making. And I couldn't do it, and my kids were mocking me. This mocking... I just told my wife yesterday, in the house now, I'm in the bottom 50% of skill at video games. That bugs me because I used to sit there and show the kids how it was done.
Yeah, right.
And now we sit down and play Mario Kart.
Kids are going to get better at you. They get better than you than everything.
Yeah, I know, but it was a good run while it lasted. I can still beat my 6-year-old son, so there's that.
Well, that's a triumph.
Alrighty, so Jamie can't look his elbow, but he can do a good podcast, and I really encourage people to listen to it. It's one of the few that I listen to on a regular basis, and
thank you.
There you go.
That's nice of you to say.
Folks, thanks so much for watching.
And thank you very much for having me on the show, Tom. This was an awesome time. I had a good time hanging out with you and all of the viewers here and asking questions. So thank you.
Well, actually, it was a bit of a bummer, everybody, because we were going to do a top 10 list a few weeks ago that Jamie would have been at. And
That's right. I was supposed to go down to Florida 2 weeks ago and didn't.
So
we'll do it again soon.
Well, we might have to do it online at some point. Yeah, right. We'll look forward to that. But yeah, good times. Folks, there's one of these every night at 9 p.m., so check those out. But we're going to let you all go for now. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
And I'm Jamie Keagy.
We'll see y'all next time. And
See you guys.
I should probably click the outro button here.